Okay, if anybody has any questions or comments. Yes. Well, please take that.
What is the tradition of monks back then asking what kind of attainment another monk has gotten? Why didn't they just say, where are you at? And
Perhaps it would have been considered too direct, too confrontational, too blunt.
Or do they do it for the purpose of the suttas?
And what?
Or do they suggest it like that just for the purpose of the suttas?
You mean a stylistic feature?
Yeah.
Well, that's hard to say. I'm just trying to think if there are passages where one monk will directly ask another, what is your attainment? Those who attain arhatship, in normal health, often they come to the Buddha and they make a declaration. But even then they don't say, I've achieved arhatship, but what they usually say is that I've understood. Rebirth is finished, the spiritual life has been lived, what had to be done has been done, there is no more for this, coming back for this. Even then it's done in a somewhat indirect way. Though the Buddha makes pronouncements about the attainment of disciples, usually after they pass away. Oh, but there are a few cases, actually a few cases come to mind of, this is where disciples do make declarations of their attainment. I'm thinking particularly, there's actually a lay woman who makes a declaration that, again, it's a little bit indirect, that they say that, how does it go? It is impossible that anybody might say of me that I have not abandoned the 5 lower fetters. So it's like implicitly suggesting the attainment of the stage of non-returner. Or there is no fetter bound by which I might come back to this world, something like that. Yeah, did somebody else take the microphone?
I have it here.
Okay.
Hello? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's something very unsettling about the sutta having a justification for suicide.
Yeah, I understand that, yeah.
So I'm trying to understand maybe how that might be. I imagine that someone who is close to being an arhat or is an arhat can attain such levels of absorption in meditation and abandon pain. Why wouldn't that be a recourse, I suppose?
Apparently that is not necessarily the case. Or let's say, it seems that is not necessarily the case, and it's apparent in the case of this monk that he wasn't able to go into a deep meditative level where he could be exempt from that pain. Probably the pain of that condition would have prevented him from going into that level of absorption. It seems to me to be the case.
Thank you.
That kind of makes sense, because when someone's in severe pain, you're not really functioning. You can't think straight. You can't do anything.
This is something I know very well, yeah.
I mean, I understand that because situations put you in there, and you become non-functional.
Yeah,
Then
exactly.
I can understand that response.
Yeah.
Bhante, I'm not comfortable with this either. I don't know how being an arhat justifies that you can do this and kill yourself. Like, could there be some karma? We have a sickness and that we have to go through,
Yeah.
and like just to burn up something or other. I don't know, but I don't see how the killing is correct.
Okay, it could well be the case that the illness that he has and the pain that he's undergoing is the result of karma. And so for this reason, for somebody who is a non-arahat, one would not suggest, but this raises an interesting question. But let me just continue along that track. So it would be advisable not to take one's own life because the karma is still there. So if one cuts off the life faculty, that karma can still get the chance, probably will get the chance to ripen in some other way. But this monk will accept his claim that he's an arhat. So once he cuts off the life faculty, there's going to be no further rebirth anyplace. And so there's no opportunity for that karma to ripen. And so though there might be karma responsible for the pain, by cutting off the ground on which that karma ripens, there's no chance for it to ripen. I know the sutta is a bit unsettling, but I wonder to what extent this comes, I have to say, from our Judeo-Christian background, the idea that God gives us life, and that therefore life is something, a gift, a sacred gift given to us by God. When instead one takes in, or brings in the background of a beginningless cycle of existences, one succeeding another, and each existence originates through ignorance and craving, and it provides the field for the karma to ripen. Okay, then the alternative to the continuing of existence, it's, we think against a Judeo background, Judeo-Christian background, if one commits suicide, then either there's a blank of nothingness, or one is going to be punished by God with eternity in hell. But here, the alternative to going on through the rest of his life, it's the anupadisesa nibbana dhatu, the nibbana without any residue remaining. And so the choice is whether to continue in this extremely oppressive, afflicted, painful condition, in which all avenues of healing have been tried and nothing has worked.
Thank you.
Or going into the nibbana element and experiencing eternal, everlasting, unshakable bliss.
I just wanted to add to that. I once heard a monk once who was asked, "Isn't life a gift?" And he said, "If this is a gift, please give it back." And in other words, trying to get past this Judeo-Christian idea of we've been gifted this life and we have to. But I also wanted to ask, it seems like a big part of what, especially the first sutta is teaching, is how hard it is to assess one's or someone else's attainments in general.
Yeah.
Because they seem like they're struggling to figure out what this particular monk's attainments are. And even they think he is deluded himself as to knowing what he himself has attained.
Yeah.
And so is there sort of a message here about beware of what you think is the case? Or how do we really know these things?
I didn't see that as the intention. Let's say, before I wasn't thinking of that as the message of the sutta, but now that you bring it up, it does seem to be maybe a secondary message of the sutta. Particularly Sariputta, who is the foremost in wisdom, but it seems that he didn't excel in supernormal cognitions, and so he didn't accurately assess. He didn't get access to that information on his own, and he thought by questioning to get access to it. But as I said earlier, it's a bit strange that he asks the questions that are more appropriate for ascertaining whether or not somebody has reached, even the first stage of realization, the stage of stream entry, rather than asking a question specific to the attainment of arhatship. And then Mahachunda apparently didn't accept Channa's claim about his stage of attainment, because he was giving him advice based on the assumption that he's still dependent on craving.
Pandit, there's a question on the internet. The question is, if we consider the commentary interpretation, then it's about, is it possible to reach arahantship in such a short amount of time from the moment the venerable cut his throat? So it's like that, as a matter of seconds?
Again, this is not to be taken as a suggestion that anybody here try it. But my assumption is that if somebody has built up a very, very strong foundation of the insight, so that just a little sort of goad is needed to bring the realization, I would think that could happen in the interval immediately preceding death. In fact, there is a type of arhat who's recognized, a type of person who achieves arhatship that has a special name. It's called samasisi, which literally the same hitter, which means the life and the attainment of arhatship come together at the same time. I mean, not exactly simultaneously by the minute or by the second, but it means that if somebody is just about to pass away, just within like a few moments before passing away, they can reach arhatship. Did I say Richard did you have your hand up? Please take the microphone.
I have a friend who was the granddaughter of the monk who founded, the abbot who founded the first Buddhist temple in Honolulu. And she grew up with the belief that suicide was never allowed, not only in Buddhism, but she thought in all wisdom literatures. And she talks to me about this, and she spent a lot of time reading all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
And she believes that all the religious literature is set against suicide. And so I think it's not just a Christian belief, at least it's one that some Buddhists are raised with. Yeah.
That's actually not the case, because I know that the Jains, one of the ideals for the Jains is to end one's life by completely desisting from food.
Yes.
That's considered like the supreme ascetic ideal for the Jains. Yeah.
Right, it's something like the 31st stage of purification.
Yeah, one of those, yeah.
Right. Yes, you're right. But anyway, I'm saying that her belief, that was her belief, and so it's. I mean, there are non-Christians who grow up with that belief. Yeah.
Anybody else have any thoughts or comments on this?
Can I ask another question about
Yeah.
suicide?
Yeah.
Is there any case that someone is not yet an arhat, it's okay to commit suicide?
It's an interesting question. It was one that I thought of when I was answering one of the earlier questions. Because somebody could say, well, even an arhat who's suffering from an extremely oppressive, intolerably painful illness, can't take it anymore and takes his life, then what about an ordinary person who has an extremely painful, disabling, oppressive, unmitigatingly painful condition? I mean, if the arhat can do it, certainly it would seem that there should be a justification for an ordinary person doing it. But I don't know of any case where that's countenanced in the Buddhist literature. So it seems a little bit hypocritical for me to be saying, if I'm speaking to a person who's under that we know that the person's not an arhat and he's really suffering from a painful condition, I say, be patient, this is your chance to develop patience, equanimity. It's a great opportunity for practice. Just have to have the courage to go through with it. We're always here to help you, to give you any medicines you need. And then he says, well, Channa did it, and he was an arhat. And what am I to say? If Channa and arhat couldn't be patient enough, equanimous enough to endure it, then what about, Joe Smith? I don't know. Any ideas?
Well, Bhante, one thing that comes to mind is that, so Channa, being an arhat, knew that he would be safe after death, that there'd be no problem there.
Yeah.
But it seems to me that anybody who doesn't have that attainment,
Yeah.
If they do commit suicide, they might be throwing away this chance to practice Dhamma. They might be reborn in much less suitable conditions. So
Of course, that's a possibility.
In that case, they qualify.
Okay, so he's bringing the case of a stream enterer. Risha was going to say something? Just speak loudly.
Richard does not.
What if, say, there were elements of what a modern writer would consider to be part of that dialogue, which the authors didn't consider to be part? What if there was a context in which, say, someone was challenging the
Yeah. 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 Oh, definitely that's the case. Yeah, yeah. 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 Yeah, it seems that there's a lot in the background here that is not recorded and we don't have access to. So, yeah. Yeah, I had a very good friend in Sri Lanka who was a Buddhist monk from Switzerland. This goes back almost 10 years ago. And also a gifted artist. I say that along with Picasso, he might eventually be regarded as one of the greatest artists of the 20th century. And he had contracted a cancer, and he didn't want to go through with it. And so he just stopped eating. This was for a period, it actually started, let's see, about the beginning of November. It lasted until December 21st, almost exactly 9 years ago, when he passed away. He stopped eating and drinking, except he would occasionally take a swig of water just to moisten the mouth. And he always kept in a very, very cheerful mood. He would be able to give Dhamma talks, sometimes talking for people for hours, with enormous strength and energy, right up till the last week or so. I tried to convince him to give it up by email, and he would answer me in humorous ways. And so this is just a case that I know personally. And then there was, before I went to Sri Lanka, this goes back to the 1960s, there was a British monk by the name of Jnanavira who had several he believed that in earlier time he had achieved Sotapatti stream entry, but then he contracted several illnesses which were very disabling and prevented him from practicing meditation. And he tried living with them for years, but he just felt it was too much to continue, and then he took his own life. I'm not really saying this to try to to give a rather bleak portrait of the Buddhist monastic life. If anybody would like to ordain, we will make the knives and the poison gas available. And we have special rooms set up where no food delivery. But I think maybe the purpose of the sutta is, perhaps this is the underlying purpose, to show that there are physical conditions which are so disabling to the body that in the case of an arhat, that it could serve as grounds or reasons for taking the life. Yes, please. Wait, please take the microphone.
Could there also be a very, very deep underlying concept here that Buddha was trying to kind of rationalize it for the other noble monks, whereas the concept is how was his practicing throughout his life? I mean,
how is what?
How was his practice throughout his life? He had already attained such a high level of practice.
Yeah.
And does it really matter at the very last minute of his death? Do we need to throw a label onto it? He's become enlightened, or he has not become enlightened. I mean, if he was already practicing compassion and kindness throughout his life, does it really matter at the end whether or not he attained the label of being enlightened? It's just a word to me. So maybe Buddha was like, well, you know, he basically took his own life, you know, in a blameless way.
He, in an early part of the sutta, he himself is the one who says, I will use the knife or take the knife blamelessly.
Yeah, so I'm thinking...
And that's that statement sort of gets its meaning, is illuminated by what the Buddha says towards the end of the sutta.
Yeah.
That one who lays down the body without picking up another body is blameless. And so he himself is the one he's not using the label arahat, but by expressing himself in that way, he's implying as much.
I actually think the person who's dying is acting appropriately for what he's trying to achieve in his own life. The other monks are somehow trying to put a label on what's happening to him, whether or not he's going to attain enlightenment or not. And I just don't understand why they would try to grasp that. If you're trying to, it's almost like trying to grasp Dharma, right? And that's something that you really shouldn't practice either.
Well, this is Sariputta and Mahachanda, and Sariputta was the foremost. He was like the Buddha's right-hand chief disciple. Mahachanda is another one of the great disciples. So I think that they would have had a reasonable purpose in questioning him. It's not that they were just, ordinary monks who were just anxious to get a label to put on the monk Channa.
Thank you.
Maybe Sariputta's intention in the questions, maybe was to trip him up and convince him, to get him in a position where he couldn't answer correctly, and then he would see that he was not at arhat, but in fact he answered correctly, at least for the level of a noble disciple. Yeah, as Richard said, there seems to be like a lot in the background that is not articulated in the sutta itself. So that is often the case in suttas. Wait, please take the microphone.
Did they know he was going to kill himself when they went to visit him initially, or did they go just because he was dying? No,
I think they just went just to check out his condition, to see how he was holding up, and to see if he needed anything. Yeah, there's a story that comes in the commentaries, I think not in any canonical text. It actually is set during a lifetime of a previous Buddha, which sort of puts it in a safe remove. But a group of monks, they sort of want to expedite their attainment of arhatship, so they climb up to the top of a steep mountain. They climb up to get up there, you have to use like a rope ladder. And so they use the rope ladder to get up there, and then they discard the ladder so that they have no way to get down, except the only way to get down would be to use the supernormal powers. And so the idea is that they make the vow that we're not going to climb down in order to get food. We're going to stay up here meditating until we reach arhatship or some noble attainment together with the supernormal powers, and then we'll use our supernormal powers to go down, to go on alms round. And then I think of three of them. The first one achieves arhatship, and then he uses his supernormal power to go down, and he collects enough food for three. And then he brings the remainder up to the other monks, but they say if we were to take it, we would be breaking our vow. You've done your work, we have our work to do, you can leave us. So he goes. Then the second one achieves non-returning together with the supernormal powers. And he does the same thing and comes back to offer the alms, the extra alms to the first monk. And the first monk, the only remaining monk, sends him away and says, "You've done your work. I don't want to break the vow by accepting the food you offer to me. Let me continue with my practice." So the second monk goes away, and only one monk is left there, and he doesn't succeed, and he dies there. But then he, because of his diligent practice, then he's reborn in the Brahma world. And then he eventually comes back to the human world during the time of Gautama Buddha. And then he becomes, I think he becomes one of the figures in the Sutta Nipata, either Sabya or Nalaka. Yeah, Richard. Yeah. No. Yeah, because at least there's nothing recorded about that in the text. And I think the sky burial was a kind of practice observed in Tibet. I don't think this was done. Yeah. 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 Yeah, there's nothing said about that in the Buddhist texts. Yeah, this I don't know, but yeah. 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 Yeah, I don't think so, because I don't know any statement in the Buddha's canonical text or even in the commentaries where there was a tradition for exposing the bodies of Buddhist monks who had died to putting them out in the open for vultures to take them to pieces. The tradition would be to cremate the body. Yeah. Well, it was also done for the Buddhist monks. Yeah. Yeah, but still, it doesn't seem to me to be in accordance with, I would call it, the spirit of early Buddhism. yeah, often the bodies of ordinary people, or maybe the criminals, and maybe the outcasts, were just discarded in what they call the not the cremation ground, the charnel ground, just exposed, where again, it is mentioned in the text that vultures would take them, and hawks would devour the body, and not coyotes, what do they have? Jackals would eat the body. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. 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 Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but that would have been done in the plain, not on Vulture's Peak Mountain, where there were caves and meditating. The Buddha had his own retreat place on Vulture's Peak Mountain, and other monks would go to stay in the grottos on that mountain for their meditation. So I don't think it would have been used for the sky burials. Okay, I think it's 1 o'clock. Suki, you had an announcement to make. Yeah, first I have to say that this is the last class for the winter semester. Or actually, we're still in the fall semester. During the winter, we don't have the Saturday classes.
So this is the last lecture here until like April.
Yeah.
We won't have a lecture. So me and a few of my friends, we just come on Saturdays, same time, and continue listening to Bante's lecture. Through Ustream, we've been actually meditating and go back to previous lectures.
You mean Bhante doesn't have the supernormal powers?
Yes, he flies over to Bergen County. Bergen County, and anybody is close by and has time and wanna just don't miss like 3 months of like a winter without Bhante at all, then you can join us. It's, every Saturday morning we're gonna have, just like here, we're gonna have like an hour or an hour and a half meditation, and then 10 o'clock we listen to Bhante's previous lectures. So if anybody is interested, just let me know. I can send you information, or I can give you my email address. That's it. Thank you.
I think you can go back to, I think we started the series on the Majjhima Nikaya back in 2010. So it goes back quite a long way. Okay, so we'll end with the 3 half bows.